You know, life has a strange way of saving its most shocking moments for when you think you've seen everything. And believe me, dear listener, I thought I had. But nothing prepared me for the night my own son stood on a brightly lit stage at a charity gala, lifted a microphone to his mouth, and decided to auction me off for $1. Yes, $1. I remember sitting there at table 12, the linen stiff under my fingertips, the room smelling of perfume and shrimp cocktails. 200 people in glittering clothes turned toward me like I was some old antique they weren't sure was worth picking up. And there was my boy Brandon, standing tall, grinning like he just told the punchline to the funniest joke on earth. "She just sits at home writing her little mystery novels," he joked, waving his hand toward me. "Maybe she'll even put you in one." People chuckled, then hesitated, then went quiet. No one bid. Not one hand rose. That silence felt like a hand pressing down on my chest. And then, out of the shadows near the back, a man stood up. His voice was calm, steady, almost surgical. $1 million. The entire room froze. A different kind of silence swept in, the kind that crackles. Brandon's smirk vanished so fast it was like someone wiped it off with a cloth. His face drained from confident gold to pale marble in 3 seconds flat. Because what that man knew, what nobody in that room knew, was who I really was. And what he said next, oh dear listener. It turned the single most humiliating moment of my life into the sweetest piece of justice I could have imagined. But let me not get ahead of myself. To understand any of this, we need to go back. Back 5 years. To the day I turned 60, and quietly decided I was done living according to everyone else's expectations. The day everything started to change. My retirement party was held on a Tuesday afternoon. You'd think a person would feel excited after 35 years at the same job, but all I felt was tired. Linda from accounting brought a grocery store cake. They misspelled my name. Claire with an E, not an I, but I didn't correct them. I rarely corrected anyone back then. People I'd spent decades with shook my hand, wearing polite smiles. "You'll love retirement," they said. "Now you can finally relax." They meant well, but they didn't really see me. They never had. Brandon, my son, didn't make it. I got a text around 2 in the afternoon. "Sorry, Mom. Big meeting. Can't get away. Congrats." I stared at those words for a moment longer than I should have, then put the phone away like it didn't sting. I drove home alone to my little apartment in Normal Heights. 2nd floor. 1 bedroom. I'd moved there when Brandon left for college. Told myself it'd be easier to manage. Truth was, I didn't have the money or the confidence for bigger dreams. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and stood there looking at the thrift store couch, the coffee table with a water ring I never could scrub out. Everything I owned fit inside that tiny space. Everything I was seemed to fit there too. I made myself some tea and sat at the kitchen table. Late sunlight spilled across the counter, and for a moment, I could see dust floating through the air like tiny secrets no one cared about. 60 years old. Single mother. High school graduate. Never went to college. A resume made of sacrifices no one clapped for. I used to hear Mark's voice sometimes, my late husband. He'd been gone 30 years, but echoes like his don't fade. "You're not smart enough for college, Claire. Why waste the money?" He said that when we were dating. Said it after we married. And like a fool I believed him. Back when Brandon was young, he'd ask me why I didn't go to college. Not to be rude, just curious. But every time he asked, I felt myself shrinking, remembering I'd never measured up to the other moms with their neat degrees and tidy careers. Still, I worked every day, paid every bill, put food on the table, put him through college on a payment plan that nearly broke me. But I guess your best never feels like enough when you're the only one who knows how hard it was. Now Brandon wore tailored suits and spoke about markets and mergers, words that felt like they lived in a different language. He'd built a life so far from mine that sometimes I wasn't sure he could even see me anymore. The tea cooled beside me as the apartment darkened. Quiet. Too quiet. Then my eyes drifted to the laptop on the counter, the one I'd bought just to stay connected. But deep down I knew that wasn't the real reason. There was something I'd wanted to try since I was a girl. Something a teacher named Mrs. Henderson once told me I had a gift for. Writing. And that was the first night, the very first quiet, lonely night, when a tiny thought whispered, "What if it's not too late?" Before I go on, dear listener, let me gently say this. If you're still here with me, keeping me company in the quiet of the night, maybe it's time to tap that subscribe button. After all, stories like these feel warmer when we share them together. Mrs. Henderson's voice echoed in my memory that night. "You have a voice, Claire." Funny how a simple sentence can follow a person through their whole life like a soft lantern in the dark. Back then I didn't believe her. Mark certainly didn't. The one time, just once, I'd mentioned writing a book, he'd laughed. Not a gentle laugh. One of those sharp, dismissive ones that make you feel foolish for even dreaming. "You? Write a book?" He waved a hand like he was swatting a fly. "You barely get through a newspaper, Claire." And that was the end of that conversation, of that dream, of a little spark inside me I didn't think mattered anymore. Years passed and life kept handing me responsibilities instead of chances. Until that night, sitting alone in my tiny apartment with nothing but silence and a cooling cup of tea. Who was I kidding? 60 years old. No college education. A lifetime spent answering phones and filing paperwork. What made me think I could write anything worth reading? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And yet, I got up and opened the laptop anyway. My hands trembled as I created a new document. That empty white screen stared back at me, the cursor blinking like it was saying, "Well, are you going to try or not?" So I typed a sentence. Just one. About a woman sitting alone. Then another. Then another. They were awful, blunt, clumsy little sentences. The kind of writing that would have made Mrs. Henderson tilt her head and purse her lips. But I kept typing because, what else was I going to do? Watch old game shows until I fell asleep? Wait 3 days for Brandon to text me back? Or spend the rest of my life being the woman who never even tried? Maybe I wasn't smart enough. Maybe Mark had been right all along. But for the first time in decades, I had time. Time to try, even if I failed miserably and no one ever read a single word. The sun drifted across the table as the hours passed, and those terrible little sentences turned into 3 terrible pages. But they were mine. All mine. I thought of Mrs. Henderson again. "You have a voice, Claire." Maybe she was wrong, but I wanted to find out for myself. I saved the document as Chapter 1. 3 pages. I stared at them for a long time. Part of me wanted to delete the whole thing, pretend the moment never happened. Instead, I closed the laptop and made more tea. If not now, when? I whispered to the quiet room. Tomorrow I'd probably delete it. Tell myself it was silly, unrealistic. But tonight? Tonight I'd written something. And that was more than I'd done in 60 years. The next morning I made my coffee, took a breath and opened the document. Those 3 pages were still awful. Just as awful as I remembered. But I added a 4th. Then a 5th. 6 months later. There it was. A full manuscript, 247 pages. About a woman named Helen who just turned 62 and found herself tangled in a murder investigation at her retirement community. Helen was everything I wasn't: sharp, quick-witted, the type of woman people underestimated until she turned around and surprised you. I wrote what I wanted to read. A story with a woman my age at the center. Not invisible. Not a side character. Not somebody's grandma knitting in the background. A woman solving the puzzle while everyone else was looking in the wrong direction. When I typed the last sentence, the manuscript sat there on my laptop for 2 whole weeks. What was I supposed to do with it? You can't just march into a bookstore and hand them papers like it's a school project. There were agents, publishers, query letters. An entire labyrinth I'd never learned how to navigate. For 3 weeks I read everything I could find online. How to write a query letter. How to find an agent. What publishers wanted. Most of it felt like reading instructions for a spaceship. Still, I made a list of agents who handled psychological thrillers. 15 names. I wrote a query letter. Rewrote it. Rewrote it again. Then I hovered my finger over the send button and heard Mark's voice in my head. Who do you think you are? So I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. Then I sent the other 14. The first rejection came 2 weeks later. I was washing dishes when my phone buzzed. I dried my hands, checked the email, and there it was. Thank you for your query, but this isn't the right fit for our list. I sat at the kitchen table and cried. Soap still on my wrists. Cried like something precious had slipped through my fingers. Brandon called that week. I almost didn't tell him, but I wanted just once for someone to understand how it felt. I got a rejection today, I said quietly, from a literary agent. He paused. A rejection? Then he sighed. Mom, I don't want to be harsh, but maybe this is a sign. A sign. You're 60 years old, he continued. How many 60-year-olds get book deals? The publishing world wants young, fresh voices. Mrs. Henderson always said I could write, I whispered. Yeah, when you were 17, he said. That was 43 years ago. Look, I'm just being realistic. Realistic. That's what people say right before they step on your dreams, isn't it? Brandon's next word stung far more than he realized. Maybe it's time to find a hobby that's, age appropriate. He meant it casually, but it hit me like a slap in the face. Then he added, as if he were doing me some great kindness, have you thought about joining a book club instead of trying to write for one? My throat tightened. I see. Don't get upset, he said quickly. I'm trying to help you avoid disappointment. Then without missing a beat, anyway, I got promoted today. Senior accounts team. I'll be managing the big clients now. 6-figure deals. That's wonderful, Brandon, I whispered. Thanks. Hey, I gotta run, client dinner in an hour. These things wait for no one. You understand. He hung up before I even managed to say goodbye. The rejections came like raindrops. The second rejection arrived 3 days later. Then the third. Then the fifth. By the 10th, I stopped keeping count. Every one of them said some version of the same thing. Not right for us. Not what we're looking for. We'll pass. By the 20th rejection, I was staring at the little trash can icon on my computer. My cursor hovered right above it. One click. Just one. And the whole dream would vanish poof like it never existed. I could pretend I'd never tried. Pretend I'd been sensible all along. Pretend Brandon had been right. Maybe I was too old. Too late. Too invisible for a world that wanted bright, young voices. My finger tightened around the mouse. Then, ping, an email. The subject line read, full manuscript request. I blinked at it. Read it again. And again. Whitmore Press, one of the small publishers I'd queried weeks earlier, wanted to read my entire book. Not just the sample pages. The whole thing. I sat there shaking, reading the email 5 separate times, afraid the words would rearrange themselves into something disappointing. But they didn't. They wanted my book. I sent it that very night. And then I waited. Every day I checked my email 20 times. Then 30. Their website said to expect a response between 8 and 12 weeks. I counted every single one of those days like a child waiting for Christmas. Then one afternoon, 2 months and 3 days later, the email arrived. I opened it slowly like the words might bite. Dear Miss Hartley, we would like to offer you a publishing contract for your manuscript. I froze. Read the line again. Then again. They wanted to publish my book. Actually print it. Put it in stores. Let strangers read words I had written at that tiny kitchen table. I stood up. Sat down. Stood up again. My heart was thumping like a scared rabbit's. I needed to tell someone. Someone who would understand what it meant. So I called Brandon. He answered on the 4th ring. Hey, Mom. Kind of in the middle of something. What's up? They want to publish my book. I blurted out. A publisher. Whitmore Press. They sent me a contract. Brandon, they're actually going to print my book. Silence. Then, wait, seriously? Someone actually wants to publish it. Yes, I said, smiling into the phone. Whitmore Press. Another pause. A longer one this time. Never heard of them, he finally said. Are you sure they're legit? There are a lot of scams out there targeting older people who want to be writers. Did they ask you for money? My breath caught in my throat. No. They're a real publisher, Brandon. Okay, but have you even Googled them? I'm just saying, a real publisher probably wouldn't want. He hesitated. Well, no offense, but what kind of publisher goes after first-time authors your age? My smile faded. They specialize in mysteries and thrillers. Aha. So what's the advance? $500? 1,000. I heard him typing in the background. These small presses barely pay anything. You're not expecting to make real money from this, right? I looked down at the contract still open on my screen. I haven't looked at the details yet. Well, that's the first thing you should check. And don't get your hopes up about this being some kind of career. It's probably just vanity publishing with a professional name. Which is fine. If it makes you happy to say you've got a published book, great. Just don't quit your day job. Then he chuckled. Oh wait, you already did that. Something in me wilted. I should let you go, I said softly. Yeah, I really do have to run. This client call started 5 minutes ago. We're talking about a $3 million account. Real high-stakes stuff. But hey, congrats on the book thing. That's different. Talk later. Click. The line went dead. I sat there in the quiet. Just me, the glowing contract on my laptop, and Brandon's words echoing in the room like a draft coming through an old window. Vanity publishing. Don't quit your day job. First-time authors your age. He didn't ask what the story was about. Didn't ask how I felt. Didn't say he was proud. Didn't even sound happy. All he heard was my age. But the contract? Oh, that contract said something very different. Whitmore Press was printing 5,000 copies. They believed in the story. They believed in Helen. They believed in me. Brandon just didn't happen to be one of the believers. The publisher asked if I wanted to use a pen name. I said yes before she even finished the sentence. Something about separating me from the woman who wrote that manuscript felt safer. Like I needed a layer of distance in case Brandon's voice got too loud in my head, in case the whole thing fell apart and made me look foolish. I spent an hour scribbling names on a notepad, crossing them out just as quickly. Then one finally stuck. S.J. Morrison. Close enough to my real name that I could feel tethered to it. Different enough that, if I needed to disappear behind it like smoke, I could. 6 months later, the book was printed. No fanfare, no book tour. No celebratory champagne with a room full of agents who believed in my story. Just a cardboard box on my doorstep containing 10 author copies and a quiet email from my editor. They're here. I sat at my kitchen table and held the book the way new mothers cradle their children. Careful, reverent, a little afraid to press too hard in case the moment dissolved. My name, well, a name was on the cover. The pages smelled like ink and new beginnings. For a full week, nothing happened. I refreshed the Amazon page like it was the stock market. Sales rank in the 600,000s, then 500,000s, then back down again. A single ant could have made more progress climbing up a window pane. Then it appeared, my first review. 5 stars. The title simply said, "Finally." I clicked it with trembling hands. Finally, a thriller with a protagonist who looks like my mother. I'm tired of reading about 25-year-old detectives. Helen is 62, sharp, stubborn, and real. This is the book I've been waiting for. Thank you, S.J. Morrison. Please write more. I think I read it 10 times before the tears came, soft, stunned, grateful tears. Not the kind from rejection. These were something else. These felt like being seen. Maybe Mrs. Henderson had been right all those years ago. Maybe I did have a voice. That night, I opened a new document and typed, Book 2. The second novel came fast. 4 months of steady writing, late nights, early mornings, endless coffee. Helen was back, older, sharper, carrying her age like armor. The plot tightened. My confidence grew page by page. Meanwhile, sales of book one climbed slowly but undeniably. Reviews began trickling in. Mostly women in their 50s, 60s, 70s. I finally found a character who feels like me. Thank you for this. Please don't stop writing. I read every one. Halfway through book 2, Whitmore Press called. They wanted it officially. And this time the contract was bigger. More pay. A longer deadline. Real validation printed in black ink. Brandon visited for dinner that week. He walked in using the spare key I'd given him years ago and glanced at my laptop. Still at it, huh? He kissed the top of my head like I was a child scribbling pictures. That's nice, Mom. Keeps you busy. I closed the laptop. Book 2 comes out in 3 months. That's great, he said, already rummaging through my fridge. Hey, they're making me senior account manager. Youngest they've had in a decade. I congratulated him genuinely. He talked about 6-figure deals over dinner, his partner track, his corner office. I listened. I was proud of him. When he finally stood to leave, I tried again. The publisher is hosting a launch event. A small one. I'd love for you to come. Text me the details, he said, already halfway out the door. I'll see if I can make it. Busy month. He didn't come. He didn't text. 3 months later, he arrived with someone new, Jessica. Straight dark hair, crisp blazer, polite handshake instead of a hug. It's so nice to finally meet you, Claire, she said. Brandon talks about you all the time. We sat down at my little kitchen table. I served lasagna. Jessica nudged it around her plate more than she ate it. Brandon says you write romance novels, she asked lightly. Psychological thrillers, I said. Oh, she laughed. Same thing, right? Stories. I opened my mouth to explain the difference, but Brandon was already talking about a restaurant they'd tried last weekend. Jessica rested her hand on his arm, and he lit up in a way that belonged entirely to her world. Polished, young, ambitious. A world where I was his mother who wrote little books. They left 20 minutes after dessert. The apartment felt painfully quiet when the door closed. I washed the dishes by hand. Each plate, each glass, each fork slowly, carefully, like I was grounding myself. And when I looked at my laptop on the table again, I realized something. Brandon's approval had nothing to do with why I was writing. Not anymore. Jessica hugged me at the door when they left. Quick. Polite. Barely there. You have such a cozy little place, she said. Very charming. It was the kind of compliment people give when they don't know what else to say. Book 2 came out the following week. This time the sales didn't crawl, they leapt. Top 10,000 on Amazon within 48 hours. More reviews, more emails, more women my age finding something in Helen that the world rarely gave them anymore. Representation, respect, relevance. One email arrived on a quiet Sunday morning while I was drinking coffee in my robe. Dear S.J. Morrison, I'm 64 years old. 3 years ago my husband died and I thought my life was over. Then I found your books. Helen is my age. She's smart and capable and refuses to be dismissed. Your character showed me that I'm not finished. I'm just beginning. Thank you for giving me hope. Please keep writing. We need you. I read it once. Then again until the words blurred. Then I cried into my coffee, soft, grateful tears that warmed my chest. I forwarded it to Brandon with a message. This is why I write. 3 days later he replied, That's sweet, Mom. People are really nice online, aren't they? I stared at his text for a long time. People are nice online. As if the woman who wrote to me was just being polite. As if she hadn't just handed me her grief, her healing, her heart. But I was learning. I didn't need Brandon to understand. That woman understood. And right then that was enough. 2 weeks later, an email arrived from New York. The sender was Patricia Reeves, a literary agent. For a moment I almost deleted it, spam I thought. But I skimmed the first lines, then Googled her. My breath stopped. She represented authors whose books I had seen on tables at airports and front shelves at Barnes & Noble. Authors with movie deals. Authors who were real. Her email was short, but it vibrated with possibility. Dear Ms. Morrison, I've been following your sales trajectory. You're writing for an underserved market, and it's working. I'd like to discuss representation for your future work. We spoke the next day. Her voice was crisp, confident, so much like Helen that I smiled. Your numbers aren't just good, she said. They're consistent. And publishers care about consistency. With the right push, book 3 could hit lists. You mean? USA Today at least. New York Times if everything aligns. Are you working on book 3? I just started. Good. Finish it. Send it to me. I'll find you a bigger house. I signed with her a week later. In private she called me Claire, but to the industry I became S.J. Morrison. She didn't care either way. Names are just doors, she said. The writing is what walks through. Over the next few months she taught me everything Whitmore never had. How to negotiate, how to ask for what I deserved, how to spot a bad deal before it slithered across the table. Book 3 sold to a larger publisher. A real advance. A marketing budget. Talk of putting my book in airport stores. Airport stores. The holy grail for mid-list writers. I called Brandon. Some part of me, small, stubborn, still wanted his pride. They want to put book 3 in airports, I said. Patricia thinks it could hit the USA Today list. His voice was distant. Distracted. Wow, they're really going for this, huh? Good for you, Mom. At least it keeps you occupied. Better than sitting around the apartment all day. Keeps me occupied. Like writing was a craft project. Like I was killing time until something else came along. Brandon, I said gently, I should let you go. Actually, wait, he said. I wanted to tell you Jessica and I are engaged. Doing a courthouse thing next month. Nothing fancy. My chest tightened but I smiled through it. That's wonderful. Let me help you plan something. A small reception maybe? Nah. Jess isn't into big weddings. Just immediate family. We'll send you the details. They married on a Tuesday afternoon. I wore the nicest dress I owned and sat in a small chapel with 5 other people. Jessica's parents. Her sister. 2 coworkers I invited so I wouldn't sit alone. The ceremony lasted 12 minutes. Afterward, her parents hosted dinner in La Jolla. White tablecloths. Wine I couldn't pronounce. I sat at the end of the table, quiet, observing. Jessica's sister turned to me. So Claire, what is it that you do? Her voice was polite, curious, and utterly unaware of the storm I'd walked through to get here. I opened my mouth to answer. Before I could answer Jessica's sister, Jessica jumped in with a smile that was just a little too bright. This is Brandon's mom, she said. She writes books as a hobby. Her sister's smile widened in polite approval. Oh, that's nice. What kind of books? I opened my mouth, then closed it again. Brandon was deep in conversation with Jessica's father, discussing a client. He didn't hear. Or maybe he did, and chose not to correct her. Mysteries, I said finally, my voice thinner than I meant it to be. I write mysteries. How fun, she said. I should pick one up sometime. She never asked for the title, and I didn't offer it. I left before dessert. Told them I wasn't feeling well. Brandon walked me to my car. You okay, Mom? I'm fine, I said. Just tired. Thanks for coming. I know it wasn't a big thing, but it meant a lot to have you here. He hugged me and hurried back to his new wife and her family, into a life that seemed to be filling up with everything except space for me. I drove home through the same streets I'd driven for 40 years. Turned the radio on. Turned it off. Sat at red lights with the glow washing over my hands and thought about that woman's email. The one who said my books gave her hope. Brandon didn't understand my work. Maybe he never would. Jessica called it a hobby. Patricia called it a career. I finally knew which one was right. Book 4 hit the USA Today bestseller list 2 weeks after its release. I was standing in the grocery store, staring at a checkout display of my own novel, when my phone rang. Patricia didn't bother with preamble. Claire, you did it. Bestseller. I froze in the aisle, one hand clutching a box of pasta, the other holding the phone. There it was, S.J. Morrison, printed right there on the USA Today list. Number 17. The money came next. Royalties from 4 books. Foreign rights in 15 countries. Audiobook sales. My accountant called to discuss quarterly taxes. The numbers didn't look real. More than $700,000 in a single year. I'd made more writing in 12 months than I had in a decade answering phones. Patricia broke down my production schedule when I asked how I'd done it. You write clean, Claire. Very little revision needed. Tight deadlines, but you always meet them. Most authors burn out at this pace, but you don't. I didn't tell her I wrote every day because the stories wouldn't let me stop. That Helen kept knocking on the door of my imagination with new puzzles, new cases, new troubles she needed me to untangle. Life changed in small, quiet ways. I stopped checking price tags. Stopped worrying every time my car made a strange sound. Stopped calculating which bills could wait. The constant financial fear I had lived with for years finally loosened its grip. Emails from readers arrived daily now. Women who felt invisible, overlooked. Women who wrote about reading Helen and feeling seen for the first time in years. I answered every single message. Somewhere during those months, the confidence I'd been building settled into my bones. I wasn't writing for fun. I wasn't keeping myself busy. I was a writer, a real one, for books published. A 5th one coming. Book 5 was different, darker, heavier. Helen was 65 now, my age. She'd lost someone close. She was questioning everything she believed. The writing came slower but truer. I was deep in chapter 12 when my phone buzzed. Brandon's name lit up the screen. I let it go to voicemail, finished the scene, then called him back. Hey Mom, did you get my message? Sorry, I was writing. What's up? I need your help. Big favor. Something in his tone made me sit straighter. What kind of favor? The firm's annual charity gala. I'm heading it this year. It's huge. Children's literacy. All the partners will be there. I'm up for senior manager. This has to be perfect. That sounds important, I said gently. What do you need? Honestly, everything. Vendor coordination, seating charts, day of management. It's in 3 weeks and I'm drowning. Jess is swamped at work. And I thought, well, you're home anyway. A pause. You're not busy, right? I mean, just writing. Just writing. The pull was familiar. The old reflex to help, to fix, to make it easier for him rose instinctively. I looked at my laptop. Chapter 12 waited. My deadline was 8 weeks away. Patricia had meetings lined up, opportunities for the next stage of my career. I have a deadline in 2 months, I said carefully. And Patricia has something scheduled. 2 months is plenty of time, he said. This is just 3 weeks. Come on, Mom. I really need you. And just like that, the old weight settled back on my shoulders. Of course, honey, I heard myself say quietly. What do you need? He exhaled with relief. Everything, honestly. Can you come by tomorrow? I'll give you all the details. Vendor list, budget, seating chart template. His voice kept going. My heart kept sinking. And Helen, my Helen, waited silently on the screen behind him. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stood there in the cool hallway, surrounded by vases of hydrangeas and roses I had personally approved, while Jessica's words replayed like a slap I hadn't seen coming. Remember when she was just nothing? Just nothing. 30 years of raising him. 30 years of working, surviving, putting myself last so he could move forward. 30 years of showing up. And to Jessica, all of that was nothing. I finally heard Brandon's voice, softer, almost embarrassed. Jess, don't say it like that. But he didn't correct her. He didn't defend me. He didn't say what I needed him to say, not even once. I stepped back before they turned the corner and saw me. I couldn't face them. Not while my chest felt like it was cracking down the center. I slipped out a side door, walked to my car, and sat behind the wheel with my hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. I wasn't nothing. I wasn't some bored woman with a cute hobby. I was someone who had built a career, quietly, privately, because I never wanted to be a burden to anyone. The next morning, Brandon called. "Mom, can we go over the program order? Nash wants to tweak the opening remarks." I stared at the phone vibrating on the table. For the first time in years, I didn't answer. I drove to the bookstore instead. Walked through the front doors, past the displays, past the cafe line, past a group of teenagers sitting on the floor reading manga. And there it was. A table near the entrance, stacked with my books. All 4 of them. A cardboard sign with my pen name. S.J. Morrison, a reader favorite. A woman in her 70s picked up The Silent Garden, ran her fingers over the cover and smiled. "I love this one," she told her friend. "Helen reminds me of me. Finally a heroine who talks like we do." Her friend nodded. "She feels real." They walked away, both carrying my book. I stood there, the air trembling around me, my heartbeat settling into something steady and certain. I wasn't nothing. I was building something that mattered to readers, to women who had lived whole lives being overlooked, to people who saw themselves in stories no one else wrote for them. My phone buzzed again. "Brandon." I let it ring. That night I opened my laptop, pulled up chapter 12, and read the last line I had written. Helen, my fictional companion, my mirror, was standing alone in her kitchen, wondering when she'd stop being the center of her own life. I whispered, "I know exactly how you feel." And then I wrote, not because I had a deadline, not because Patricia was waiting, not because readers wanted book 5. I wrote because it was mine, finally, wholly mine. For a moment no one moved. 200 people sat frozen, forks halfway to mouths, wine glasses hovering in the air, eyes flicking between Brandon and the dark corner of the room where I sat. My name card gleamed under the chandelier light like a spotlight I never asked for. Brandon laughed as if the silence were part of the joke. "Come on, folks. She's harmless. Promise." More uneasy laughter. Someone cleared their throat. Someone else whispered, "Is he serious?" I felt my face warming, a slow burn rising from my collarbones to my cheeks. I couldn't tell if it was embarrassment or something sharper. Humiliation dressed up as humor. My son, my grown son, auctioning me off like a novelty item. My pulse thudded in my ears. My hands stayed folded, my back stayed straight. I kept breathing evenly, quietly. At table 1, Jessica was smiling. That tight-lipped, amused but not amused expression she used around people she thought were beneath her. She nudged Brandon's arm lightly as if to say stop, but she wasn't trying very hard. At the head table, Gregory Nash raised an eyebrow, not shocked, just evaluating. Watching how Brandon handled himself. Watching the room. And the room. Oh, the room was shifting. You could feel it. The discomfort, the pity, the second-hand embarrassment settling like fog over the tables. Then a voice finally called out from table 8, forced and awkward. $20? A few polite laughs bubbled up. Brandon grinned, triumphant. There we go. Lunch with the author herself. Author. He said it like a punchline. Another bid followed. $25. Then $30. Then silence again. People weren't bidding because they wanted lunch with me. They were bidding because they were trapped in a room where politeness was currency. I sat still, a statue carved from shame and self-control. My books, those 4 stories that had pulled me out of grief, solitude, obscurity, sat in bookstores around the world. My 5th was waiting to be born. Women wrote to me every day telling me I had changed something in them. But in this room, in my son's voice, I was a novelty, a joke, a filler item for his charity auction. Going once, the auctioneer said. Going twice. I stared at the centerpiece in front of me. White roses, eucalyptus, tiny fairy lights woven through the arrangement. Beautiful, fragile, intentional, like everything I had done for this event. Sold for $30. Light applause. Scattered, embarrassed. The kind of applause people give when they don't know where to look. Brandon gave an exaggerated bow. My mom, ladies and gentlemen. People turned to me. Some smiled sympathetically. Some pretended not to see me. Some just looked away. I lifted the corner of my mouth in a polite, small smile, because what else was I supposed to do? Stand up and leave? Cry? Make a scene in front of his colleagues? No. I swallowed the humiliation, folded it into myself like all the other things I'd swallowed to make Brandon's life easier, pressed it down deep where no one could see it. The auction ended. The crowd clapped. Brandon walked off the stage radiating pride, shaking Nash's hand as if he'd just sealed a major deal. But Nash wasn't smiling anymore. He leaned toward Brandon, said something, short, clipped, barely audible from where I sat. Brandon's expression faltered for the first time that night. His shoulders stiffened. He nodded too quickly. I watched all of this from table 12 while people around me continued their conversations, unaware that something inside me had just cracked in a way that wouldn't be easily repaired. Dinner turned to dessert. Dessert turned to closing remarks. The gala ended with applause and champagne, and I stood alone in the back of the room, invisible again. But something had changed. For the first time in a long time, the invisibility didn't feel like a curse. Felt like freedom knocking. Nash nodded slowly, thoughtfully. "Well," he said, offering his hand, "for what it's worth, my wife would be furious if I didn't ask you to sign her copies. She's going to be thrilled." His handshake was warm, respectful, nothing like Brandon's dismissive pats on the shoulder. The crowd around me began to swell again. Readers, fans, people who suddenly realized the woman sitting quietly at table 12 was someone whose work they had carried through airports, through breakups, through hard years. Someone who mattered to them. I kept hearing it again and again. "You made me feel seen. You wrote the only character who ever felt like me. Your books got me through my divorce. My mother loves you. Can I take a picture for her?" The room that had once pitted me now seemed to orbit around me. And in the middle of it all, Brandon looked like a man watching his reflection crack. His smile was gone. His confidence gone. His certainty that he knew who I was gone. He stood on that stage like a child who told a joke and suddenly realized it wasn't funny. Jessica had sunk into her chair, face bloodless, hands twisted in her lap. For the first time since I met her, she looked genuinely speechless. Peter Lawson reached me at last, holding out his card. "Miss Hartley, we can talk tonight if you're willing. Or tomorrow. But truly, we need to move fast. This is a major deal. I've been waiting months to speak with you. Months. While I've been seating strangers at tables and triple-checking vegetarian options, Netflix had been waiting months." My throat tightened. Not with sadness, but with something sharper. Recognition of how much I had given, how much I had lost, how much I had dimmed myself for people who never wanted to see me clearly. I took Peter's card. "I'm available," I said, steady and calm. "Tonight." The words seemed to echo. A hush fell. People watched me like they were witnessing something shift, like the air itself was changing. Brandon finally stepped off the stage, weaving through the crowd until he reached me. "Mom," he said, his voice thin, "why didn't you tell me?" I looked at him, really looked. My son, who I had carried, raised, supported, defended. My son, who saw me as a helper, a placeholder, a background character in his life. And suddenly I understood something. He didn't know who I was because I'd never required him to. "I did tell you," I said softly. "You just didn't listen." His mouth open, closed. He looked small in that moment, smaller than I'd ever seen him. Before he could speak again, Mr. Nash stepped behind him, one hand on Brandon's shoulder. A firm hand. A warning hand. "Brandon," Nash said quietly, "a word." Brandon's face drained. He looked between us, panic flickering at the edges. But Nash was already guiding him away. Jessica didn't follow. She stayed seated, staring at her lap like the floor had just opened beneath her. The guests were floating around me, laughing, congratulating, celebrating this unbelievable twist in the evening. But inside, I felt something deeper than excitement. I felt myself returning to me. Peter extended an arm politely, offering to walk me toward the exit so we could talk somewhere quieter. Before I followed him, I glanced back one last time. Brandon on the side of the ballroom, being spoken to like a subordinate. Jessica alone at table 1, her smirk wiped clean. My place card still sitting at table 12, forgotten now. For years, I had sat quietly in the back of rooms. Tonight I hadn't moved. The room had moved to me. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible at all. I need you, I continued, to start treating my work like work. Not a pastime. Not a joke. Not something that only matters when it benefits you. I need you to respect it. And me. Brandon nodded so fast it looked like he was afraid the moment would slip through his fingers. I can do that. I will do that. I swear. Just give me a chance to prove it. His voice was small, softer than I'd heard from him since he was a boy. For a moment I felt a flicker of the child he used to be. The one who had brought me scribbled cards on Mother's Day. The one who used to fall asleep on my shoulder during thunderstorms. But he wasn't that boy anymore. And I wasn't the woman who apologized just to keep the peace. I'm not angry anymore, I said slowly. But I am disappointed. And I'm tired, Brandon. Tired of being invisible in my own son's eyes. He let out a shaky breath. You're not invisible. Not anymore. I see you. I do. He looked down at his hands. I just wish I'd seen you sooner. Silence settled between us, heavy but not hostile. The kind of silence that signals something shifting, something breaking, something rebuilding. I want to make this right, he said. Tell me how. Tell me what I can do. For a start, I said, you can stop belittling me, especially in front of other people. He swallowed hard. I will. I promise. And I added, when I tell you about a deadline or a book launch or a meeting, I need you to understand that it matters. It does. He nodded again. It does matter. I was just too wrapped up in my own world to notice. That's on me. I watched him for a long moment. His shoulders slumped. His face raw. He looked like a man finally waking up to the reality he'd built around himself. Mom, he whispered. I don't want to lose you. You won't, I said. But you will have to get used to sharing me with the life I've built. I'm not just your mother anymore. I'm an author. I have readers, responsibilities, a career. He let out a breath, part relief, part grief. Okay, he said. Okay, I can do that. We sat there quietly. Two people who loved each other deeply, but had finally reached the point where love wasn't enough without change. After a moment, he said, Can I ask you something? Yes. When does book 5 come out? The question startled a laugh out of me. A real laugh. Warm. Human. Surprising. I'm working on it, I said. And no, you don't get early chapters. He smiled. A real one, small but sincere. I'll buy it the day it hits shelves. I know, I said. And for the first time in a long time, I believed him. Brandon wiped his face with the heel of his hand. I'm proud of you, he said quietly. I should have said it years ago. I felt something loosen in my chest, something that had been tight for far too long. Thank you, I whispered. He stood, hesitated, then leaned down and wrapped his arms around me. It wasn't the tight, possessive hug he used to give when he wanted something. It was different, careful, respectful, earnest. When he pulled away, I could see the effort in his face. Someone trying, truly trying, maybe for the first time. I'll give you space, he said. But please call me later, when you're ready. I will. He nodded, wiped his face again, and walked out the door. When it clicked shut behind him, the apartment felt lighter, quieter, wider somehow. I sat back down at the table, pulled my laptop closer, and opened the document titled Book 5, Draft 1. For the first time in months, the cursor blinking on the blank page didn't intimidate me. It felt like possibility. It felt like my life, my real life, was finally beginning. My work is real work, Brandon, I said, my voice steady. It's not something to fill my time. Not something cute. not something optional. He nodded, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. I need you to actually listen when I talk about my work, I continued. Not just nod and wait for your turn to talk about your job. And I need you to understand that I'm not just your mother. I'm Claire. I'm a writer. I have a life that doesn't orbit around you. You're right, he whispered. All of it. You're right. I'll do better. I swear I'll do better. You'll have a chance to prove that, I said. But I'm done sacrificing myself to make your life easier. Those days are over. His shoulders dropped. Can I make this right? His voice sounded smaller than it had in years. Can we fix this? We can try, I said gently. But you have to actually try. Not just say you will. You have to show me. He nodded, hesitated. Jess wanted to come too. She's ashamed of how she treated you. She's been crying since last night. She can call me when she's ready, I said softly. But you came first. And that means something. A faint smile tugged at my lips. Start by reading one of my books. Actually reading it. Don't skim. Don't pretend you already know what's inside. Read it and tell me what you think. He laughed through his tears. I'll read all four. I should have read them a long time ago. I should have been your biggest supporter, not your biggest critic. Yes, I said. You should have. We sat in silence for a moment, quiet, heavy, honest. Then he stood. I stood with him. He hugged me, but it wasn't the kind of hug where he needed reassurance or rescue. It felt different, grounded, respectful, like a boundary had formed between us and he could finally see it. I love you, Mom. I love you too. And then he left. I watched him walk to his car from the window, watched the taillights disappear down the street. For once, I didn't feel the urge to run after him to fix everything to make sure he was okay. I sat back at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. There it was, Book 5, Chapter 12. The Chapter 1 hadn't been able to finish because I'd been too exhausted planning his gala, too drained trying to hold together a version of myself that wasn't sustainable anymore. An email from my publisher sat waiting. Claire, everything okay? Just checking in on the deadline. I typed back. Need 2 more weeks. Personal situation resolved. The story will be better for it. Their reply came within minutes. Take the time you need. We trust you. My phone was still off. I turned it back on. 17 more messages had come in overnight. Patricia, Peter. Even a few readers who had somehow found my number. I'd read them later. The phone began ringing immediately. Brandon's name lit up the screen. I looked at it. Then I looked at my manuscript. Helen. My protagonist, my creation, was still waiting for me. I let the call go to voicemail. I'd call him back later. Right now I needed to finish this chapter. A small smile crept across my face. The apartment was quiet. The coffee was warm. And the words had finally come back. For the first time in my life I had chosen myself. And it felt right. It felt earned. It felt like the beginning of something new. I typed the first sentence of Chapter 12, then the second, then the third. And the story, my story, kept going. So that's my story. Now I want to hear yours. Was Brandon's apology enough? Or should the boundaries have been even firmer? Tell me in the comments. And if you want more late-night stories like this one, make sure to subscribe.